Hey there everyone, welcome back, and if you're new here, my name is Spring, and in today's video I will be showing you how I put together a quick DIY birthday party. I put together a balloon garland, and I'm also sharing how I make a 3-tiered cake. So if you enjoy these types of videos, DIY party planning, homemaking, and home decor, I would love if you would subscribe to my channel. Alright guys, so the first thing I'm going to get started with is baking my cake. Now I am baking this a couple of days before my daughter's birthday party, and I like to do that just because it gives me time, you know, for the cake to of course bake and cool down. I also like to put my cakes in the freezer. Now she wanted a funfetti cake, so I didn't need to go and make a homemade cake. I'm just using the normal funfetti the cake box, you know, the funfetti cake from the box. So I am using these smaller round cake pans, and I did use 4 of them. I made one extra just in case the 3-tiered wasn't tall enough or vice versa, and if I had enough I was going to make cupcakes, but I did end up having enough. So I'm just showing you here, I'm just making sure that I'm dividing up the cake batter into equal parts so that way the cakes are not uneven. And then of course I'm just going to pop it in the oven and bake according to the directions on the box. And then once my cakes are done, I like to flip them upside down and let them cool on a cooling rack, and then I wrap them in saran wrap and I put them in the freezer. So while my cakes were cooking, I wanted to put together this hoop. I bought this from Amazon last year, and I will do my best to find the exact link, and I'll link that down in my description box. I thought I had lost this. We used this for my daughter's wedding when she got married last year, and I found it in my garage in the box, so I'm so glad that we didn't lose it somewhere along the way. It's pretty simple to assemble. It just takes a little bit of strength to kind of get the circular frame going, but it's super simple and I really love it. It's really great to bring out for certain parties if it goes with your decor. Alright, so now moving on with the cake. Now that they've had time to totally cool down and get frozen, so that way they will be easier to work with, I start with my first layer. I typically don't cut off the tops of them. And then what I'm going to do is use the buttercream frosting that I already made. I'll link that down in my description box, my recipe, and I use my piping bag. Now I had too small of a piping bag. I didn't have any bigger ones on hand, but I cut a hole down on the bottom, as you can see here. That way I can easily pipe the frosting on. I've noticed that when I put the frosting on using this method, it gives me much more frosting in between layers. That way the frosting in between layers is not very thin, but I like to kind of put the frosting as flat as I can. Now with the other 2 layers, I do like to cut the tops of them off. Now I find when I stand them up and cut them, as you saw me doing earlier, I find that that gives me a more even cut. That way once I put the other layer on, everything is, you know, pretty flat, and everything lies very just very flat and even. So I did not have a cake stand. I did used to have one, however it became very uneven, so a lot of my cakes were kind of leaning all the time. So I just used my cake stand and I just moved the cake in circular motions with my hand. But I'm on to the last layer on the top, and when I do the layer on top, as I mentioned before, I like for there to be a lot of frosting. That way it gives me enough frosting to make the top part as flat as possible. And then another tip I want to give you is when you're doing your crumb coat, separate some frosting into a separate bowl, because if you're dipping in to the same frosting as the one that you'll be doing your final icing or frosting with, you may end up with crumbs in that. So put that frosting that you're going to do your crumb coat with in a separate bowl. But as you can see here, I am just applying the frosting thick enough, and I'm noticing my cake is starting to kind of lean a little bit. So typically I use wooden dowels that they sell in cake decorating sections. However, I didn't have any more of them, so I improvised and I used some little skewer sticks, and you'll see here how I measure them and I insert them in. And I wasn't too concerned about the skewer sticks not being thick enough because this is a smaller cake, and I did add 4 of them in, and that actually ended up working out perfectly. So it gave me the stability that I needed for my cake so it wouldn't start leaning. Alright, so now I'm working with my cake. Once I have already applied the crumb coat, and then I did place it back in the freezer for probably about 30 to 45 minutes. And as I mentioned, I'm applying the last layer of frosting, and then once I go over all of the cake, then I'm going to be adding in my sprinkles. Now, originally I was thinking of another method to apply the sprinkles. However, I was kind of in a time crunch on this day. I had somewhere to be, so I thought I'm just going to apply the sprinkles with my hands, which I've seen done before. But the importance on this is just you want to be sure to make sure that when you're applying sprinkles or anything else on the bottom of your cake, that you get it to look as even as possible. When I was doing this, I did notice some parts of it were a little bit uneven when I was applying the sprinkles, but it worked out perfectly. I had to go up a little bit higher on the sprinkles, but not a big deal. Okay, so now let me go back to the frosting part. So I have this, it's kind of like a frosting spatula, and I do use that so that way the frosting looks more even. However, my frosting spatula, the other one that I was using with the pink handle on it, it wasn't long enough, so I had to use my other frosting spatula. But going back to the sprinkles, it's super simple. So you want to add these with when you're applying your last layer of frosting, so that way the frosting is a lot softer and easier to work with, so that way like your sprinkles will adhere to your frosting. So as you can see here, I'm just adding in the sprinkles. No, nothing major to doing that, but again, just making sure that everything's even, and of course your hands are clean. I mean, I'm doing this cake for my family, so it wasn't a big deal for me to not use gloves. But yeah, just super simple. Just apply and reapply and repeat that technique. Alright, so now I'm moving on to the decorations now that my cake is all done, and I'm putting together a balloon garland. The balloon garland and the streamer, I found these at Walmart. I want to say I paid somewhere under $20 for the balloon garland kit and the streamer set. And this balloon, the air machine, that was purchased at Walmart. It actually belongs to my daughter. I don't even own one. I always borrow hers, so at some point I need to buy my own. But these balloon garland kits are super simple to use. However, I've mentioned this before that I want to start, or I need to teach myself how to make the balloon garlands without the kit, the little plastic it's kind of like a tape that has holes in it where you could put the ends of the balloons in through. Now this is great, it looks really nice. However, I want to get better at making my balloon garlands, so I know there's a whole technique to that. So for my next party planning video, which will be probably late September, early October, I'm actually doing an up themed birthday party. So by then I need to definitely know how to make these balloon garlands. But moving back to this, so this particular balloon garland, I wanted it in these colors that represented or kind of looked similar to like the funfetti cake, you know, with all the different color sprinkles, because my daughter did want some like little animals on top of her cake with birthday party hats, and she made the little hats to go on top of them. You'll see in a moment at the end of the video what I'm talking about, but again, just these balloon garland kits, they're really simple to use, and I've made these before where I air up all the balloons and then I gather them trying to put them all together. But for me personally, I've noticed that keeping all of the colors together, sorted, as you can see here how I have them laid out on the floor, and then adding them in how I want to put them onto the garland, I personally find that that's a lot easier for me and just a little bit less time consuming. Alright guys, I'm just showing a little bit of what I thought would look nice, and it didn't work out, but as you can see here, I have some portions of a shimmer panel on there. Those were sent to me through House of Party. I would definitely check them out. They sent me those. However, it didn't work out just because my frame was in a round shape, so I ended up taking them down. I just kind of had in my head a vision of how I thought this would look. However, again, it just didn't work out, so I ended up taking them down. And then this streamer that we have here, we did purchase this at Walmart as well. It went perfectly with our theme, so that is what we ended up with, and it just went perfect with the whole little theme of the party. And then these other balloons, I just purchased them at my local grocery store just to add on to the table where we would have my daughter's cake and where we would have our guests sitting at as well. Alright, my sweet friends, I want to thank you so very much for watching today's video. If you have any questions on anything that I've shown you on today's video, be sure to leave them down in the comments and I will definitely answer your questions as best as I can. Again, I want to thank you so much for your support in watching today's video. It always means so very much. We'll see you on my next video. You have a wonderful, blessed day, friends. Bye-bye.